What's up, San Diego? How's it going on a Sunday morning? San Diego Padres winners of their last 4 games, dating back to the series in Philadelphia, playing a lot better baseball, which is great to see. I'm Braden Surprenant, the host of the Braden Surprenant Show, each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fans. Good to be talking with all of you today. Greatly appreciate you making our day a part of yours. It's a beautiful day out there in America's finest city. I know we got some heat wave warnings out here in San Diego, but should be a great day to get out, get on the boat, get outside, have a barbecue, do what you got to do, hanging out with family, whether you're going to church or going to a travel ball game, some summer activities. Thanks again for making our day a part of yours. We're going to get to a lot of Padres talk today, obviously, as it normally is the case here on the Braden Surprenant Show. We're going to talk a little bit about their last couple of games in which the Padres have looked a lot better than they've had the previous 6 games that they had on their road trip. Now, that's been kind of the case the entire season for a team that, as we've mentioned before, has been very mediocre. That's what mediocre teams do. They win some games in a row. They look really good. Your manager goes out and says, this is who we are, this is who we could be, and then you go out there and lay some eggs every once in a while as well. So, what kind of team is the San Diego Padres team? They're still a mediocre team. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what they are. You are what your record is. And right now, it's 41-40. A .506 winning percentage. We have now played 81 games of the season. We're at the halfway point of the 2024 season, and the Padres are 1 game above 500. Gave them the excuse at the beginning part of the year with the schedule that they had at the beginning part of the year. Wasn't that much easier in the month of June. It will get a little bit easier in August, but still, I don't know if that really matters to the Padres just because the San Diego Padres haven't done well against teams that aren't very good. We've seen that a lot this year. We've seen that a lot with the way that they have played and played down to their competition. But the Padres could get on track here with a sweep over the Brewers today as they are trying to complete a 4-game sweep over a team. That's very difficult to do in Major League Baseball. I don't want to put in built-in excuses, but it would be nice for the Padres to win a 5th straight baseball game here on a Sunday afternoon to start off this homestand before they welcome in the Washington Nationals and then make an East Coast trip to Boston before hitting up Texas as they kind of wind down that first half of the season. Again, this is the halfway point for the Padres this year. And we could go in some first half evaluation of every spot on the roster if we would like. Might mix in a couple of other things, but they're playing some pretty good baseball against the Brewers, who they've seemed to own the last couple of years. They've been very good against Milwaukee. In fact, even this year, they've already won the season series on Friday when they knocked off the Brewers, taking 4 games at least in the season series and adding a 5th yesterday and trying to go 6-1 against Milwaukee this season, a first-place team in the National League. I mean, they're 44-33. They're 11 games above 500. The Padres have done a good job beating up on the Brewers. They've done a good job beating up on the Dodgers, who is a first-place team in their own division. They did well against the Braves, who have the number 1 wild card spot. And you go through a lot of the spots in the wild card, and the San Diego Padres have done well against the teams that are the top of those wild card standings and haven't done very well against teams at the bottom of those standings. It's a very hit-and-miss team. It's a team that is like to the point where I feel like I'm saying the same thing each and every Sunday, and we're saying the same thing each and every day during the week. If you don't like what the Padres' record is, just wait about a week, and it'll be back to about 500 or where it was the previous 2 weeks before that. The San Diego Padres are almost like the weather in the Midwest or in Texas and in the South. You don't like the weather, just wait 25 minutes, and you'll get a brand new weather pattern rolling through there. That's what it's like. That's what it's like watching the San Diego Padres team. What's been really cool about this Padres team the last couple of games is they've kind of ridden into this series against Milwaukee on fumes in terms of their bullpen and in the fact that they have had some injuries, significant injuries, to some players that have had to miss some time. I mean, yesterday's lineup was ridiculous how empty it was from what it was on opening day, with not having Fernando in the lineup and not having Jerickson Profar in the lineup, and obviously with Bogaerts missing time with his injury. And the update on him this week was maybe early July, mid to late July. I mean, he's just waiting. It's not like it's a muscle injury where it's about feel. It's all about once that bone is healed, because it's a fracture, it's time to go. It's time to go. So we'll see how much longer he needs to heal on that to get Xander Bogaerts back. And we're going to talk about Xander Bogaerts in a later segment. And it kind of coincides with another segment that we have. I mean, all of our segments today kind of intertwine. They're all about different things, but they intertwine as I try to set up the show for today. Obviously talking about how great the Padres have played so far this weekend. But other things to talk about when it comes to this Padres ball club is talking about some of the bright spots, especially a guy like Jackson Merrill, who's really found his power over the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's been on a tear hitting the ball out of the yard, so I don't know what adjustment he made with the hitting staff down there at Petco Park, but he is starting to hit the ball with some pop. Padres in general are hitting the ball with some pop, trying to get some slug going. Petco Park, again, one of those places that notoriously is a pitcher's-friendly ballpark, but this year, for some reason, it has been very hitters-friendly. The Padres hitting some long balls this year at Petco Park, and that continued over the weekend, continued to last night. Jackson Merrill now up to 10 home runs, and a lot of those coming over the last couple of weeks, finding his power. I know the summer months, ball tends to fly out of the ballpark a little bit more with a lot of these players. But it's good to see Jackson Merrill not only make the adjustment to the big leagues in his first couple months of the season, but now making that adjustment to adding some power. And he's only 20 years old. I say the same thing with Fernando all the time. He hasn't even hit his man strength yet. Jackson Merrill's not even close to that point. So hopefully he can continue the success. But that leads into another segment on the show today, and we're going to get into at about 8:30. About is it panic time for some of these struggling stars in Major League Baseball? I mean, there is a lengthy list for the 2024 season for all of these slow starts for three rookies that tore it up last year that are now in their sophomore years, that are all not doing very well in their sophomore seasons, mixed with some aging veterans that have notoriously been really good, have put up almost Hall of Fame numbers, if not Hall of Fame numbers, that have come down to earth a little bit, including Xander Bogaerts. And then, of course, some 2023 All-Stars that are absolutely struggling at the dish. Just a tough year for all these guys. Is this a concern for years to come? Are you worried about that next year for potential Padres players? You know, some of the young guys having a sophomore slump. I mean, you don't want to speak some negativity into existence, but it's always something that is on your mind. It could potentially happen, which leads into the next segment we're going to talk about, and that is the very muddled National League wildcard standings that will have an impact on the trade deadline. We talked about it the last couple of weeks, and I keep saying it, and I agree with this, and I'm going to keep saying it. You have to be able to make a bold move at the deadline and win and go after winning when your window is win now. And the Padres' window to win is now with their stars that are only going to get older. And it is now when they're right there in the thick of things for the wild card. And it's right there when a lot of the question marks coming into the season, closer, outfield, who's going to play center field, who's playing left field, fifth starter. I mean, everything that was a question mark going into the season has been a tremendous surprise and a huge asset to the Padres. You got to strike while it's hot and go into the second half of the season thinking or hoping or relying on what you were relying on when you handed out these contracts, and that's for your stars to go out there and be stars. You got the best performance out of all of these question marks that were no guarantees going into the season. In fact, I would consider all of these pieces to be big rolls of the dice. Jerickson Profar is a huge roll of the dice. Statistically last year, he was probably one of the worst baseball players in all of Major League Baseball. He is going to be a starting outfielder in the All-Star game for the San Diego Padres in the National League. You got to strike while the iron's hot, getting a player like Jerickson Profar to play way above what his contract is. Matt Waldron, a knuckleball pitcher that was lucky to make it through the first couple of months with the San Diego Padres, has made an adjustment and is now arguably one of their best pitchers. You have to strike while the iron is hot, because these players, there's no guarantee that they're going to do the exact same thing next year, or if you're going to have these players next year in the future is not guaranteed. And I think there's a difference between living in the moment now and living like there's no tomorrow compared to being a reckless liver of life, if you will. There's a difference. I could go out there and live my life to the fullest and enjoy every moment I can at my young age of 29 when I'm youthful and I can still do a lot of different things, but I can also, at the same time, do that without hurting my future. It's one thing to go out there and live your life to its fullest, saying there's no guarantee about tomorrow, but there's also some recklessness of, I'm going to spend everything in my bank account because tomorrow could not possibly happen. Obviously, that's not the case. It needs to be somewhere in between. But if you're the San Diego Padres and you're in win now mode and you have a spot in the playoffs right now and you're battling for a playoff spot and you have these stars that are only going to age further into the future, you have to strike now and stop thinking about this perfect future that might not ever come. Or you might not see the return on your investment on some of these guys. Or next year, Jackson Merrill has a down year. Or Matt Waldron comes back down to earth. Or you don't have Jerickson Profar. I mean, there's so many different things that you cannot predict. So why continue to be like, we're going to keep all these guys and we're going to try to compete for the future, and the future is great and it's going to be grand and everything about the future is great. I've heard that every year of my life being a Padres fan. It was always these minor league guys are going to save the day and the future is coming up and it's going to be grand, and just wait, 2027, 2028, this team's going to be really good. 2029, 2030, this team's going to be very good. I got news for you. There's no guarantee that that's ever going to happen. So you might as well strike while the iron is hot. You might as well strike when you have your fifth starter as a knuckleball pitcher being a phenomenon where Patrick Mahomes is trying to replicate him at football practice. You might as well strike now when you got a guy that's making $1 million who is having arguably his greatest year ever in his career, who used to be a number one prospect, who is probably a bust of being a number one prospect, finally hitting his stride at age 31. You got to strike while he's still hot. You got to strike when you got a rookie who is transitioning from shortstop to center field, who you really threw out there because you needed him, not because he was ready to go, play up to a potential where he could compete for a National League Rookie of the Year award, and is now starting to add some power to his bat. I mean, these are the times that you need to strike, not pretend or try to think that this is what it's going to be in the future for the next couple of years, and these guys are going to be able to replicate what they have put together. I mean, you could say the same thing about all these other years with some of these stars that the Padres have had. I mean, Manny Machado in 2022 had a phenomenal year and carried the team. He's not having that year right now, even though he is turning it on in the last couple of weeks, and he is dealing with an elbow. But again, you don't know about injuries with elbows and hip flexors and knees and different things that come with age that you're going to have to see from your aging players. So as much as I do believe you don't want to trade your best two assets in the minor leagues, I also believe every year that you are in this window of these aging stars after you sign these contracts, you have to make some sort of buy, whether it's big or small, to give your team an opportunity to compete for a World Series. If you're not doing that, you're not trying to win. If you're not doing that, you're not serious about winning as a franchise. And the Padres claim that they are serious about winning as a franchise. And to be honest with you, they've proven it the last couple of years at the trade deadline anyway. Do I want to see them trade Salas and DeVries for one player? No, absolutely not. There's not one player out there that's worth trading for at this point in time to give up a Salas or a DeVries. But should they go after a couple of bullpen pieces and an arm and be part of the conversation? The answer to that question is yes. And anybody that says no, you need to reevaluate about whether or not you want your Major League Ball club to win. Because we could sit here and say all these things about how, like, well, they haven't proven to us that they're willing to win yet. I mean, if you live by that philosophy, the team is never going to be at a point where they can win because it's never perfect, especially for a team in San Diego that doesn't have necessarily the same resources as other teams. And I've talked about that ad nauseum multiple times on different shows. But to sit here and it's like, we're going to wait, I mean, that could be at any point in time. And by the time that they might be able to play to that point where you can add or you want to make a decision to add or sell, it might be too late. Can't just wait for some of these perfect things to align. That's never going to be the case. You can't operate a ball club like that. So we're going to dive even more into that in the 9 o'clock hour. We got a lot to talk about here on the show, on the Braden Surprenant Show. Again, each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. If you want to join the show, feel free to call 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. You can weigh in on the chat. You can weigh in on all of my social media platforms at @B_SURP. Give me a follow on X. Give me a follow on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. You could also follow my YouTube page at B_SURP. We're broadcasting live on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. We're on YouTube. We're all over the place. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, just kicking off on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
A happy place comes in many colors. One that leaves you feeling refreshed. Something that gets you all fired up. Or gives you the space to chill. Whatever your color, bring happiness home with CertaPro Painters and make your happy place your home. CertaPro Painters. That's painting happy. Get started today at CertaPro.com. Each CertaPro Painters business is independently owned and operated. CSLB numbers are 105-2440, 107-1052.
Hey, it's Dorothy Tran with a weekend events update brought to you by the California Association of Realtors. This Saturday, head to Encinitas for the Summer Fun on the 101 Festival. The Smooth Jazz Festival is happening all weekend at Rady Shell. And then in La Mesa on Sundays, the Sundays at 6 concerts. Buying a home in today's environment is tough. That's why you need a California realtor in your corner to negotiate on your behalf. Let's go to work at championsofhome.com. That's championsofhome.com.
Lowe's knows owning a project means owning the right tools. And during Craftsman Days, you can save big on what you need from a brand you trust. Get a free Select V20 tool when you buy a Select Battery 2-pack. Plus, get your choice of the V20 string trimmer or leaf blower for only $99. Find these savings and more today. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 7/10 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
I want to learn how to cook, but I keep ordering takeout.
Accomplishing goals is hard, but when your goal is to learn a new language, Babbel makes it easy. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel will help you start having conversations in as little as 3 weeks. Words and phrases you'll actually use. So when someone asks,
"How's your French going?"
you can say,
Babbel facilite grandement l'apprentissage d'une nouvelle langue.
Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's BABBEL.com. Babbel.com.
Hey, gang, it's your old pal, Woodsy. Imagine, if you would, waking up this time next week and being 100% personal debt-free. That's credit cards, that's car loans, even personal loans that you might have taken out. Loan Pronto's Equity Express line of credit can make that happen for you. Homeowners turning their home's equity into cash almost instantly with Loan Pronto's AI-based system. You can get approval in about 10 minutes with almost no documentation, no appraisal, and no hassle. You could get hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your home, use that money to pay off all of your other loans that you have out out there. The average homeowner is saving over $850 a month doing this. Your home's value is up. Use that to wipe out your credit card debt. Get some money for a home improvement project that you've been putting off. Now's the time to do that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars at your fingertips. Approval is just minutes away. So call them today, 619-207-4336. Ask again about their Equity Express line of credit, 619-207-4336, or go to loanpronto.com, 619-207-4336. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval.
Plug in a Hyundai EV and the extraordinary happens. From the charge time and range in the Ioniq 5 and 6 to the adventurous spirit of the Kona Electric to the 601 horsepower Ioniq 5N, Hyundai EVs make the extraordinary electrifying. There's joy in every journey.
EPA estimated 303-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 5 SE SEL Limited rear-wheel drive and 361-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 6 SE long-range rear-wheel drive with fully charged battery. Actual range may vary. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details.
Febreze. So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
The best things in life, they come in twos. 2 scoops of ice cream, 2 tacos. And now for a limited time, get our best deal of the year. Buy any phone when you switch to Consumer Cellular and get 2 months of service free. That's right, the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage as Big Wireless, now with 2 months free. Proof the best things in life really do come in twos. Visit ConsumerCellular.com or call 1-888-FREEDOM. Second and third month of monthly base service fee waived for new customers with the purchase of a phone and activation by July 31st, 2024. Taxes, fees, and third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has plans built just for you. Like 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. Switch today.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. See details.
We're both throwing smoke into the night. It's raining, I suppose you need a ride.
Braden Surprenant Show live and local each and every Sunday morning. Thanks again for making our day a part of yours. Greatly appreciate all of y'all. Weighing in on the chat. Sure to call in 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. It's a beautiful day in America's finest city. Summertime in San Diego, which for me means trips to San Clemente. And we do, as a family, every summer, at least a week in the summertime. I'll have to go back and forth this year just because of work and everything else. It also means 7-on-7 tournaments, which we've been a part of the last couple of weeks. I'm wearing my Cathedral shirt today. This was a 2009 shirt. That was my freshman year season before I even got there. But high school football, 7-on-7 mode. It's the build-up to football season in August. It's a great time of year for that. It's a great time of year for Padres baseball. And a great time in San Diego. So it's great. Those 5:40. I know we didn't have a 5:40 start last night because it was on Fox, but love the 5:40 starts on a Saturday night downtown. Roll through, get there a little early. It's nice and warm at the ball game. Get out late, get out at a decent hour, and Go to the gas lamp. It's a great time. Summertime in San Diego, always some of the best. Talking Padres baseball, as I mentioned before, again, they are 4.5 games behind the Atlanta Braves in the wild card. They're tied with the Cardinals now as the number 5 seed in the wild card. At the halfway point of the season, it's all second half from here on out, starting today for a game against the Milwaukee Brewers. Padres finished 1 game above 500 in the first half, trying to improve on that in the second half, and if they could do that, they'll probably be in a playoff spot. Very Jekyll and Hyde of the San Diego Padres. I want to talk a little bit about Jackson Merrill. Again, at the beginning of the season, I was talking about Jackson Merrill from the standpoint of do not get on this kid if he goes out to a bad start. Because we all knew that he was going to be a good player. He was going to be a good player in Major League Baseball. He was a first-round draft pick. He was a high commodity in the Padres organization. He quickly moved up the ranks to the number 1 prospect in the organization before they picked up Ethan Salas. And right after they parted ways with that Juan Soto trade. But the thing was, Jackson Merrill had to get thrown into the fire because they didn't have anybody else in the outfield. And the risk was we're going to let the rookie go out there and compete. And to me, I didn't necessarily think that was a good idea. Still don't think it was a good idea, even though it's worked out, because the risk of potentially ruining this kid before he got to a point where he could be an everyday player would be something that would set this organization back multiple years. Well, it's worked out so far. He continues to be one of the best players as a rookie. He's the best Jackson out of the bunch, out of the Jackson 3 of the top 3 prospects throughout Major League Baseball are rookies, with Jackson Holiday and Jackson Churio of the Brewers and the Orioles. But now is the time to start diving into, is it time to give Jackson Merrill a contract extension? And I think the answer to that is yes. Now, here's where people are going to be like, you can't do what are you just going to hand out all these contracts? How do you keep handing out all these contracts? You have all these long-term contracts. Well, for me, now is the time to strike to try to get your book set up in the future. Because what you do right now with the Padres, with the contracts, right? I mean, you look at all these major contracts that the Padres have. They have these long-term, high-money deals that have aging veterans getting paid a lot of money near the end of their careers. That is arguably organizational hell for most teams. It's like an NFL team being in cap hell for cutting a guy and eating the money and having to pay, a quarterback that used to be good that you gave a big contract to, $40 million against the cap to go away. But I think in order to start offsetting some of those contracts and not getting into the cycle of continuing replacing big contracts with more big contracts and not having any wiggle room to make some moves is to jump ahead of it with some young players, right? And everybody always says, like, well, you gotta subsidize the top contracts with these guys making league minimum. I think some of that is true. I also think that you can do that by giving guys contracts of reasonable value. So if you get to this point with the Padres of trying to offset the contracts of Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts and Fernando Tatis Jr., you got to strike on a guy like Jackson Merrill. And you got to give him a contract that the Atlanta Braves would give one of their players, like a Michael Harris II. Michael Harris II won the Rookie of the Year award last year. He got a 8-year, $72 million contract, and it pays him until he's about 30 years old, where he becomes a free agent when he's 30. That is a very affordable contract for any team in Major League Baseball. That is a contract that is an offer the young player cannot refuse because it buys him out of pre-arbitration, it buys him out of arbitration, and it buys him out of 2 years of free agency, and it's all cheap. You're not buying high on a guy and giving him a big contract. You're giving him a contract where you pay him $5 million, $8 million, $9 million, all under $10 million a year, which in this day and age of Major League Baseball is still a steal. And then you don't have to worry about giving him this big deal if he ends up playing above that contract, right? You take the risk. Now, the risk of that, of course, is, and I'm going to get to this in the next hour or the next segment. The risk of that is you have, this next year, Julio Rodriguez, Corbin Carroll, Michael Harris II, all having very, very poor sophomore years. So you could buy the hype of Jackson Merrill and say he's going to be a star and give him a contract extension where you're probably going to pay him less than what he is worth and keep him on the team for a long period of time during this core years to offset some of the money that you're going to pay your stars. Or you could go, well, we don't really want him to turn into Corbin Carroll next year and pay him, X amount of dollars or whatever he's getting. I have to check real quick. Corbin Carroll is getting $3.65 million instead of getting $750,000. I mean, to me, that's nothing. And risk that he turns into a bust after one season. There's a lot of players that have won the Rookie of the Year that have gone on to not necessarily be studs in Major League Baseball. But again, I'm not saying you give Jackson Merrill a 10-year, $300 million contract. That's absurd. I'm saying you give him one now in his rookie season of 8 years, $72 million, 8 years, $75 million, something around that range. Anywhere between 7 to 8 years and $70 to $80 million. Otherwise, let's say you don't do that. Let's say you don't do that just like you didn't do that with Fernando Tatis Jr. and the guy goes on another tear his next season. Guess who's less likely to sign a contract that's affordable for the team? That would be the guy that would have 2 great years back-to-back in Jackson Merrill. So to me, if you want to start offsetting contracts and keeping these guys, you better start thinking about jumping on Jackson Merrill and signing to a contract extension if you do believe he can continue to play like he's playing. He's only played a half of a season so far. If you are buying in and you're all in on Jackson Merrill, you got to sign him to a contract extension as soon as possible. At least one that buys him out of some years and is an offer that he can't refuse. If you give him an 8-year, $72 million deal and he doesn't pan out, he's not costing you a lot of money. If you sign him an 8-year, $72 million deal and he pans out, you're saving some significant money. And guess what? When he's 30, you let him walk and you got all the best years out of him. And you got 7 to 8 years of prime Jackson Merrill playing with 7 to 8 years of prime Fernando Tatis Jr. to help offset the aging Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado. And then all of a sudden you're paying, you could flip the contracts where paying Manny Machado $12 million seems like a steal if Jackson Merrill can live up to that hype. But for me, I think you got to jump on it as soon as you can and take the risks that he's going to be one of the better players in Major League Baseball, unless you don't believe that he is. If you don't believe that he is, and this is just like a freak first half of the season, then you don't do that. I mean, Corbin Carroll's deal is ridiculous. I don't want to give him an 8-year, $111 million contract where Corbin Carroll in 2030 is getting $28 million. There's no guarantee that in 6 years, Jackson Merrill's still going to be this player. But I'd take one out of the Braves playbook. 7 years, $72 million. Sounds good. Sign me up. And you know who's going to take that deal? Jackson Merrill. Jackson Merrill's going to take that deal because $5 million next year is a hell of a lot more than $775,000. And $8 million the year after that is more than league minimum. And $8 million after that is more than league minimum. And the 9, the 10, the 10, and the 12 is going to be better than the arbitration years anyway. It's how the Braves got so successful. If you want to keep continuing to talk about how do we pull off this grand heist of these contracts to the players like the Braves did with their top players, that's how they did it. They rolled the dice on some guys that they believed were going to be great players, and they gave them an offer they couldn't refuse. You have the opportunity to do that right now with Jackson Merrill and help your team for the future. What do you think about that? 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I know a lot of people are weighing in on the chat, but I think this is the time to strike on a contract extension like Jackson Merrill. What are the downsides of that? Well, it's funny you ask. There's 3 players in Major League Baseball right now that were superstars last year as early young stars that are now coming back down to earth after getting big contracts. We'll talk about those players next and some of the risks involved of a contract extension for Jackson Merrill when we come back on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. This is the Braden Surprenant Show each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 right here on 97.3 The Fan. 8:42 on a Sunday morning. Talking Padres baseball with all of you. Braden Surprenant show live and local each and every Sunday from 8 to 10. Wrapping up hour number 1. Talked about a lot of different things in the first segment. Kind of set the stage for today's conversation. If you want to join the conversation, 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. You can also weigh in on YouTube as well. On the YouTube chat. Thanks to all of you for watching today. Be sure to give us a like on the video. Help the algorithm out. Spread the love to more Padres fans that might not know we exist on Sunday mornings on the Padres flagship station. So thanks again to the 51 of you watching on YouTube, the ones watching on Facebook, Twitter, and the guys on Instagram as well. You can follow me on all of those platforms at B_SURP. On YouTube, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, B_SURP. Give me a follow. Help that algorithm out. We got a lot of content. I have a podcast on Tuesdays that I am a part of. We stream every Tuesday on my social media accounts at 6 o'clock. Talk Padres baseball and a lot more stuff we get into, and have some fun conversations about life and stuff like that. So that's also on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, strictly on my social media platforms. So those are all of the ways that you can consume some content if you like what you're hearing again today, at B_SURP, at BSURP on social media. So we talked about Jackson Merrill. Guy's been great. Guy's been rookie of the year caliber. Guy's been on a tear. Guy's been everything that the San Diego Padres could ask for. And my next talking point on that was it's time to start considering, if not pulling the trigger, on signing him to a contract extension. Immediately, people started freaking out in the comments. Oh, you can't give him this big deal. We gave out all these other big deals. Well, now's the time to get a guy on a contract that's favorable for the organization. When you buy him out of pre-arb, league minimum years, when you buy him out of arbitration years, when you buy him out of a couple of years of free agency and then let him be the enticing big contract where he can hit the free market at age 29 or 30. That is an offer that most young players cannot refuse because of the guaranteed money that you are going to give him up front. The risk to that, of course, is that particular player not living up to what he did in his first year. Again, we are only one half of the season into the season so far. But the thing is, for every year that you wait, it could potentially add more money to the contract. You know, one gentleman in the group chat said, like, well, I have to wait a little, maybe we'll wait till after his sophomore year to make sure he doesn't have a sophomore slump and I'm going to name some of those sophomore slumps here in a second, so it doesn't seem like we're overpaying. Yeah, but then if you wait for his sophomore year, let's say he comes out next year and puts up the same numbers and makes an all-star game, that 8-year, $72 million contract now adds $100 million. It might add $10, $20 million to it, if not $30 or $40 million. And now all of a sudden you have to give him $150 million or get close to potentially giving him the Julio Rodriguez contract, which he signed last offseason or 2 off seasons ago. He signed that 12-year, $209 million contract. I mean, the Seattle Mariners are paying him $12 million this year, and then it goes to $20 million, $20 million, $20 million, and that's not helping the San Diego Padres, giving a guy a contract like that. But the Mariners waited to make sure that Julio Rodriguez was the real deal. Well, they found out he was the real deal, and then they had to pay him as a real deal. And then Julio Rodriguez has had a poor season, at least so far. So there's no guarantee. Again, there's no guarantee of the future. You see enough of Jackson Merrill where you can go, this guy could be good. This guy could be really good. This guy is having a star-type year. Let's sign him to a contract extension now and not wait for next year just to hope that he's not Corbin Carroll and maybe we can save some money. I mean, eventually you're going to have to take a risk, and that would be the risk that he turns into Corbin Carroll the next year. And I don't even think Corbin Carroll is going to suck for the remainder of his career. I think he's more of last year than he is this year. So I don't need to give him I don't need to worry about next year him being Corbin Carroll. I think Corbin Carroll's going to turn around. He's already started to turn it around a little bit right now, but he's hitting 217. Here are the players, the young stars not taking the next step, and all of these players have contract extensions. They've already been signed to contract extensions. Julio Rodriguez, again, a 12-year, $209 million contract with the Seattle Mariners. He has already had 2 years of service time. And again, the Mariners waited. And I know they needed a face of the franchise. So did the Padres with Fernando, but they waited with Fernando. It's the same thing happened with Fernando Tatis Jr. They could have signed him in 2019 to a contract that the Braves like to give out to Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies. I mean, you go down the list. But they wanted to make sure he was good. I think they've learned their lesson on that. At least I hope the Padres have. But anyway, Julio Rodriguez this year, he is still hitting 264. He only has 7 home runs on the year, a 353 slugging percentage, which is not very good. 29 RBIs, the 90th percentile in hard hit rate. According to this article on ESPN.com, it's by David Schoenfield. He is an ESPN senior writer. It's an ESPN Plus article. It dives deeper into all of the struggles that Julio Rodriguez has, and then it gives a verdict on whether or not it's real or it's just a bad time in baseball. Because a lot of guys in Major League Baseball are going to go through years where they're not having great years. Obviously, I don't think that any of these next 3 players are the real player this season compared to previous seasons. I just think they're having bad years. And the averages all over Major League Baseball are down. But that's, again, the risk you take is you give these guys a contract like, well, we could have been paying Julio Rodriguez league minimum right now, and it wouldn't hurt so bad. Hindsight is always 20/20, but if you're afraid to make a decision based on what you think the future is going to be like, you're not going to be able. You can't be in a place to make decisions because eventually you're going to have to make a hard decision, and you're not always going to get it right. I mean, there's going to be times that you get it wrong. Let's move on to Corbin Carroll. I mean, last season, Corbin Carroll was one of the most dynamic players in the game. He hit 285, he had 25 home runs, 65 extra base hits, 54 stolen bases in 59 attempts, helped lead the Diamondbacks to a World Series appearance. This season, again, he signed a contract extension. He's only making $3 million this year, but it's going to go up to $20 million in the near future. This season, he's hitting 217 with a 308 on base percentage and a 322 slug. He's got 2 home runs. He's got 23 RBIs. His average exit velocity is 87.3 miles an hour. I mean, those are numbers that are awful. If he had that last year, he would have been sent down. If he had that last year, there was no way. Or 2 years ago, I guess, because he signed the contract at the beginning of last season. There's no way they give him a contract extension. It's bound to happen eventually. I don't think that's what Corbin Carroll is. I don't think that's the player he is. I think there's 2 parts to this conversation. I think one of the parts is Jackson Merrill's playing so well, you should sign him to a contract extension. I think that's part of this conversation. The other part of this conversation is, for as much as people are giving Jackson Merrill all this love, as they should, because he is playing out of his mind and doing great, and buying the jerseys and calling him a superstar, there is a great possibility he ends up like Corbin Carroll next year. Or even like Michael Harris II, who is not putting up terrible numbers, but he has been dealing with injuries a lot early in his career. A 250 average with a 295 on base, a 358 slug, 5 home runs, 20 RBIs. Landed on the IL last week with a hamstring injury. He has had a lot of different injuries so far in his career. And as a sophomore last year, he started off slow, landed on the injured list, and then was hitting 163 by early June. But from June 6th to the end of the season, he hit 332 with 16 home runs. Looked like a potential all-star heading into 2024. A lot of ups and downs. He got a contract a couple of years ago. But those are the last 2 National League Rookies of the Year. Either the league adjusts to you or eventually you have a bad season, and that's going to happen to Jackson Merrill at some point. I still think it's more beneficial for you to sign him to a contract extension now and give him an offer he can't refuse that's very team-friendly, than wait to see what happens after his sophomore season, his second season in Major League Baseball. Because if you let it wait too long, then all of a sudden you have the potential of losing this guy after the 6 years is up, which is fine. You could do that too, and just pay him the league minimum and then the ARB. And then when he becomes too expensive and he doesn't want to negotiate with you for a contract extension, then you'd have to pay top dollar to try to keep him and free agency in 6 years. And you're going to be like the Atlanta Braves, who ended up letting Dansby Swanson and Freddie Freeman walk after the fan base has had this emotional tie to this player that could have potentially, given them some fun history and given them some fun memories as a San Diego Padre. So that's the dilemma you're in. Sign him to a contract extension now. Wait after next year where your offer might have to go north. Again, gambling a little bit. Or don't worry about it. Use him for the 6 years. And then when he's 26 years old, 27 years old, you let him walk. Because at that point he played so well and you can't afford him anymore. I mean, those are kind of your options for the San Diego Padres. The longer you wait and the better he plays, the more money that thing's going to cost. And that contract's going to cost. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. If you want to weigh in on the show, feel free to give us a call. You could also weigh in on the chat. Leading you up to Padres baseball today, I'm Braden Surprenant. This is the Braden Surprenant Show. Each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. We talked about I just kind of want to rip through this. Again, you can check it out on ESPN.com. It was a good article by David Schoenfield about some of these aging players and some of these rookies not really doing very well this season and whether or not it's real. Aging veterans list: Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Xander Bogaerts. Xander hitting .219 on the season, and hopefully when he comes back, he could be a lot better. I agree with Ben Higgins, by the way, on the roundtable. If I had to pick a guy that's going to have a bounce-back second half, I'm picking Xander. The Padres could really use Xander to have a bounce-back year for sure. Paul Goldschmidt, I can't believe Paul Goldschmidt's hitting .231 right now. I mean, he's making a ton of money for the Cardinals and just aging quickly. It's such an interesting league right now with some of these young players getting hot, playing really well, and then sinking the next year. Aging players not being able to live up to what they're at. I mean, I know Paul Goldschmidt's up there in age. He's 37. He's turning 37 this year. He's in the last year of his deal with St. Louis, $26 million. He's getting paid this year to put up numbers: .231, 9 home runs, 29 RBIs, 29% strikeout rate. A couple other players that are struggling this year, too. Bo Bichette, all-star last year, is struggling. Hitting .237 on the season with 4 home runs and 28 RBIs. His expected batting average is a lot better, so he's getting a little unlucky, and he has been on the injured list. Randy Arozarena, that guy's had a miserable year. He's hitting .186. 10 home runs, 26 RBIs. Last one for you, Matt Olson. .251, but he's only hit 22 barrels this season. We'll see what happens with those players. Let me know what you think about potentially extending Jackson Merrill. Wild card in the National League. How is the muddled wild card going to affect the trade deadline? I'll tell you next. 97 through the Fan. Hour number 2 and final hour of the Braden Surprenant Show. Talking Padres baseball. Got into a conversation about how great Jackson Merrill's been playing and whether or not the Padres should give him a contract extension. I think they should immediately. The sooner, the better. Give him a contract offer he can't refuse. Try to offset some of those future contracts by taking one out of the Braves book. That would be my pick on that deal. Thanks again for joining us today. Weighing in on the chat. See a lot of you haven't given your opinions on that. If you want to weigh in with me on the air, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Be sure to give us a like on YouTube. Smash the like button to get those YouTube likes up to match everybody watching on YouTube. You can also watch on my YouTube page at B_SURP. Be sure to give me a follow on there as well. Subscribe to the Braden Surprenant Show on YouTube at B_SURP. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on X, Instagram, TikTok, all by the same name at B_SURP. Yeah, only 18 likes. What's going on? Smash the like button. Let's get those like number up. We got to boost those numbers. Those are rookie numbers. Let's boost those numbers on the like page. Again, you can follow me on all social media platforms, B_SURP. I'm here each and every Sunday, and then only on the Braden Surprenant Show page on the B-Surp YouTube. I also have my podcast on Tuesdays. So you got to subscribe to the Braden Surprenant YouTube page if you want to see the podcast on Tuesdays. I only broadcast that on my own platforms, so we'll be on again at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. So let's get the subscribers up on the Braden Surprenant Show page as well. You can also watch all of our shows on my social media accounts on X and on Instagram. I have one. I got to bring my bat in that I got from the Louisville Slugger Museum. I had one person on Instagram ask, "Did you ever get it in the mail?" And I didn't mail it back. I sent it home with my brother, who was driving home. I did that long trip all the way back to California. So yes, it's in my room. I've had it in my room for the last couple of weeks or so. I did get it. I got it probably faster than what the mail would have done. But yes, I did get that to the gentleman in YouTube in the Instagram chat. The thing that stinks is I only see the YouTube chat. Well, I see YouTube, X, Twitch, and Facebook all populate on StreamYard. But I don't see the Instagram comments. Those are on my Instagram page, and that's on my laptop behind me, so I can't necessarily see those. But if you're watching on Instagram, most of them are my followers or some of my friends. We appreciate that. I had somebody earlier in the chat give me a shout-out for the shirt, the Dawn shirt. He said he was class of 2015, which means your 10-year reunion's next year, buddy. It's already been 10 years. The 2014 class had the reunion yesterday. I wouldn't say a moderator for that, but as a member of the alumni board for Cathedral Catholic High School, I had to be there and tell them all the great things about Cathedral, all that stuff. Gave them a tour of the school, which looks 10 times different than it did when we went there. I was class of 2013, but I knew a lot of the kids behind me in class of 2014. The thing that was odd, though, is there was a lot of people that I recognized, but I didn't know they were. I was like, I don't know who these people are. He come up and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, hey, I know you're familiar, but I could not." And they were wearing name tags, and they had the picture of their senior picture on there, and I was just like, that's not helping me. It's kind of fun. It's because especially it wasn't my class, so it was the class behind me. So I knew who these people were when they were in high school. And then I see all of their faces throughout San Diego. And I could have swore I saw most of these people at a beer fest or something at Petco Park. If you would have told me that's where I saw them last. Because I was sitting there going, where have I seen this person before? Where have I seen this person? Hilarious. Yes, Charisma Montali was behind the bar. He is the bartender for all of the reunions, and the next reunion I think is July 20th, and I think that's the class of 1984. I think is the next reunion coming up. I don't know if I'm working that one or not. I digress on the reunion talk. Let's dive into some more Padres talk. Before we dive into the muddled wild card and how it's going to affect the trade deadline, who are buyers and who are sellers, let's get out to the phones. Loyal listener out in New Jersey, Mitch joins us on the Braden Surprenant Show. Mitch, what's going on?
Braden, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call. Hope you survive this heat wave. It gets its hour turnout here. It's 97. I heard it was worse in other parts of the country out west. Is it always cool in San Diego, or is that a myth?
The cloud cover, Mitch, makes it nice and cool. Otherwise, we'd be a desert more times than not. So we got a little bit of the marine layer today, keeping it cool for as long as possible. We'll have a couple of hot days, but for the most part, it's definitely a lot better than when I used to live in Texas. I'll tell you that.
Well, lucky you. And I try to do it with your YouTube, but I guess I'll have to come over there for you to explain it to me. I agree with you, Jackson. Merrill, he's going to be Rookie of the Year. Sound like now I got Michael Trout. I'm not saying I don't think he's got as much power as him, but he plays a good set of feelings. So far, he's hitting good. I'd love to see him sign him up because I'd love to see his Padres still go after another outfielder. I don't think Roberts would cost a lot. He's having like an Adam Dunn year, but he did hit 30 home runs last year. And I'll leave you thinking, talking about. I'm hoping the basement come get reasonable with these salaries. But you've seen Baltimore. They're top to bottom, and they couldn't fit Jackson Holiday. But Gunnar and Atley, I think one of them has bars as an agent. I think 2 or 3 years, they might not be able to hold him. I'm hoping we get back sold next year. But what do you think about those three? And thanks for taking my call.
And I appreciate that, Mitch. Thank you very much. Again, talking about potentially signing Jackson Merrill to a contract extension. Some people in the chat, my guy Johnny says, let Merrill play a year or two and let him prove that he can maintain this level of performance. We were talking about that earlier, Johnny, and here's the thing. The longer you wait, the more expensive the contract's going to be. And you're not in a position right now to sign gigantic contracts anymore. That's why you take the risk now that he's going to be good and you sign him to a contract he can't refuse. People always tell me all the time, like, how did Atlanta Braves, get all these guys for so cheap? That's how they did it. They signed him when they were really young. They didn't wait for a long time for them to, play out of what their range would be. They signed him to a deal that they can't refuse, and then they get players that are playing above what they're getting paid. Because if you sign a guy like Jackson Merrill to a contract extension that's not like necessarily a insane statue contract, $200 million plus, $150 million plus, they're still hungry. I mean, they still got a big contract coming up when they turn 29 or 30, which is still a prime spot to get a big deal in free agency. So they're still going to be hungry. They're still going to be going after it. And I appreciate the phone call from Mitch. Let's talk about this chaotic National League wild card. We're going to break down how it affects the trade deadline in just a second. But let's look at this wild card for a second. Wild card right now in the National League is nuts. You got the Braves leading the way. They kind of have a very large cushion with the rest of Major League Baseball, or with the rest of the National League. There are 4.5 games in front of St. Louis in the number 4 spot in the wild card standing. St. Louis and the Padres, in terms of games back, are even though St. Louis has a .001% better of a winning percentage. Plus, they took 2 out of 3 from San Diego, so they own the tiebreaker as of right now. Padres are going to have to go to St. Louis later in the year, which I think is in late August. They got 4 games in late August. They got to take 3 out of 4 in St. Louis if they want to win the season series against the Cardinals and eliminate that tiebreaker problem. So that's a big series at the end of August. But it's those two leading the pack. And then after that, Arizona is out by a game. Pittsburgh, a game and a half with Washington. Chicago, New York, 2 games back. Cincinnati, 2.5 games back. And now the Giants are relatively in the cellar at 3 games back. Colorado and Miami, their seasons are over. 12 and 12.5 games out, respectively. Colorado winning last night to jump in front of the Marlins, by the way, and not be the worst team in the National League on a walk-off pitch clock violation. That is stupid. That is a dumb way to end a baseball game. That is not going to happen all the time, but that was stupid. A walk-off pitch clock violation. That is something that when they made that rule, everybody was going, well, what if they did? Like, it's never going to happen. It happened in the Nationals-Rockies game. That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. That is the dumbest way to end a baseball game. A walk-off pitch clock violation. Are you kidding me? This is dumb. This is stupid. Game was faster, though. Game was fast. And I'm not like super anti-pitch clock. It's been fine. I think most people ignore it now, and everybody abides by it anyway. But the walk-off pitch clock violation is so stupid. I agree. Like, Elise in the chat, did the umpire get the Gatorade bath? Yeah, who do you give the Gatorade bath to? You didn't do anything to get the walk-off. It's not like the batter laid off a pitch for ball 4 for a walk. It's not like he was hit by a pitch. It wasn't like, he was able to put it in play and went a walk. Who won the game for you? It's not the guy at the dish didn't do anything. He was just standing in the box. Run over and dunk the Gatorade cooler on the Nationals reliever. Hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks for not being part of the game right now. Stupid. Stupid. So dumb. Walk off pitch clock violation. I mean, the amount of events that need to happen to make that a reality is ridiculous. You need a tie score, obviously. You need the bases loaded. You need a 3-2 count. And then you need the pitcher to not be on the rubber in time or deliver a pitch in time. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Totally dumb. It's a stupid way to end a game. But thank God it was the Nationals and the Rockies, two teams that are relatively irrelevant in Major League Baseball. Anyway, back to the standings. Cardinals and Padres in the last 2 wild card spots. Diamondbacks game out. Pirates and Nationals a game and a half out. Cubs, Mets 2 games out. Reds 2.5. Giants are 3 games out. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams within 3 games of each other in the National League wild card. That's insane. That is insanity. And most of them are just around 500. It's not like they're all good. They're just everybody's very mediocre, which I think eventually you were going to see with the new schedule where you play everybody. You realize that a lot of teams are just kind of 500 ball clubs at this high stage of Major League Baseball. The American League's a little bit different. They're a little bit more top heavy, but they got better teams. I mean, the Red Sox are a half game out of a wild card spot, and they're 41-36, and then everybody else in the American League is under 500. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You got 17. You have more teams under 500 than above 500 in Major League Baseball, and all of them are relatively around 3 or 4 games either above or below 500, which goes back to what I said a month ago on Andy Nelston, that most teams play at a 500 clip. It's very rare that you see a team play at a ridiculous pace. They usually have a couple of winning streaks mixed in there, but to play at anything over a 500 clip is very, very impressive in a sport where everybody's a pro and it's the best players in the world. And this schedule of playing everybody every year is showing that every season, I think it's going to be like this in a battle for a playoff spot. You play everybody, and you have extra teams that can make the playoffs. And this is before that they potentially add another team to the postseason. maybe 2 more teams. I mean, they've been talking about doing an 8-team on both sides bracket for years now. And when the next CBA comes around, I would not be surprised if that is the case. And then, talk about a watered-down trade deadline. And we're going to talk about that trade deadline right now for a second when it comes to the Padres, the National League, and everything else. You look at the standings in the National League wildcard race, and you have all of these teams, these 9 teams battling for 2 playoff spots right now, and that's assuming that Atlanta doesn't try to, buy, right, or Milwaukee or LA or Philly, some of the teams that are well within a playoff spot, the 3 division leaders, obviously, and then, of course, Atlanta that has a big lead over the Cardinals for that first wild card spot. So naturally, when you have all these teams that are competing for a playoff spot, what is the natural reaction from most fans? We've had Kathy in LA talk about this a couple of times on the phone, and it's a valid point. Despite everything that I have said about how the Padres need to be all in and go after some of these players, you're going to have a lot of teams that might be all in, right? You got 9 teams that are battling for a playoff spot right now at almost the halfway point. Halfway point for the Padres. Everybody else is just almost there. You would imagine that everybody is going to be involved at the trade deadline. I don't think that's necessarily the case. In fact, I think there's probably just 4 teams that are going to be buyers at the deadline when it comes to the National League wildcard teams. I'm going to tell you those teams and why, and kind of sort out how this wild card affects the trade deadline when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show, live and local, each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 9:23, Braden Surprenant Show. Live and local each and every Sunday morning. Thanks again for making our day a part of yours. Thanks for smashing the like button. If you haven't done that on YouTube, be sure to do that. You can follow me on social media, B_SURP. You could also subscribe to my YouTube page at B_SURP, at BSURP. Go out there and subscribe, as we have other content on there as well besides just the Sunday show here on 97.3 The Fan. Talking Padres baseball with you. We're also taking a dive into this muddled wild card standings in the National League, that it continues to be muddled with everybody beating up on each other in the NL, and how it affects the trade deadline. I've mentioned before, and all of these parts are still true to this day because they haven't really done anything about it, and they haven't improved in certain these spots. But the Padres are in the need of, it's kind of a laundry list to try to improve themselves from being a 500 ball club, but starting pitching help, bullpen help, power bat, which is the case for a lot of teams in Major League Baseball at every trade deadline. It's always need an arm, need a starting pitcher, need a front-end starter, need some bullpen help, need a power bat. Padres got a lot of contact bat. They don't have a lot of slug, even though they've been slugging the last couple of days at Petco Park, a park that's now a slugging park somehow. I don't know how that happened overnight, but it did. So the Padres need some more slug in their lineup as well. We've gone over the list of different guys that I would go acquire. Again, if you are looking for, because I know fans like to do this, I like to do this too. Let's try to help the ball club out. Play a little general manager yourself. These are the requirements of a player to potentially trade for if you're the San Diego Padres. Got to find a bad team that's not competing, which we're going to go through some of these spots here in a second. Have to find a player that doesn't cost a lot of money. So either pre-arb, arbitration eligible, or a small contract. And, in my opinion, and why I'm willing to trade some of these prospects, you have to have a guy or a player that has at least a year after this year of control or a couple years of control to kind of offset what you're going to lose at the end of next season, but also what you're going to lose in terms of some pieces near the top of the farm system that are expected to come up over those next couple of years. So for me, when it comes to acquiring players, I'm looking for players that can help in those spots. So I'm looking for bullpen help, starting pitching, and a power bat. I'm looking for players that are controllable, and I'm looking for players that are cheap. Because, again, the Padres have to stay underneath $10 million at this trade deadline. They got to keep everything within $10 million in order to stay underneath the competitive balance tax, of course. Those are the requirements for the Padres. Now, who will be a buyer and who will be a seller? Because a lot of the time, and we've had people talk about this before, well, you got 9 teams in the National League that are still well within the National League wildcard race to make a postseason berth. Wouldn't all those teams be buyers at the deadline? Wouldn't it be a seller's market? Well, that's assuming everybody is in a position to go win right now, which is not the case. Let's take a deeper dive into that. ESPN.com put together a list, and I agree with this list, so we'll go through it. Jesse Rogers, ESPN staff writer. Again, he goes into more detail, but he breaks up the National League wild card into adders, on the fence, and likely to subtract. That is where we're at with only the wild card team. So we're going to break up 9 teams into this list. Let's start with the for sure buyers. It's kind of near the top of the National League wild card standings. The for sure buyers, for multiple reasons, are the St. Louis Cardinals, the San Diego Padres, and the Arizona Diamondbacks, as well as the Cincinnati Reds. Those are the 4 buyers at the deadline in the National League wild card. The San Diego Padres are buyers, and I could get into more of this in the next segment, and I'm going to. They're buyers strictly on the fact that their timeline is their timeline is win now, their window is win now. It might be the end of the window with the way some of these older veterans have been playing. But the reality of the matter is the San Diego Padres are buyers because they have already made the decision to be buyers a couple of years ago. And it was the main reason why they were buyers again last year, because the window of opportunity is now. It's not in the future. It is now. And as much as you're seeing the window start to close and Padres fans start to panic on not seeing a World Series during this window and having to start over, you can't do both. And you have already made your decision to win now by signing Machado to a contract extension, by signing Xander Bogaerts, by giving Fernando Tatis Jr. a contract, and Jake Cronenworth, and Joe Musgrove, and Yu Darvish. You've made the decision. There is no guarantee in the future that that team is going to be better. I said it in the first hour. Jackson Merrill, Matt Waldron, Jurickson Profar were all part of, and even Robert Suarez, because you didn't know who the closer was going to be, because there was iffy of whether or not Robert Suarez was going to be able to be the everyday closer for the San Diego Padres, because he had been through some ups and downs in his first 2 years with the Padres. But closer, fifth starter, left field, and center field were the 4 biggest question marks on this Padres team. Those are the 4 probably most for sure things right now on this Padres team. The 4 aspects of your team that you needed to outperform and roll the dice on have all exceeded expectations. Now, that's not a guarantee that they could finish through, but you got yourselves a situation where you can work with that, and you got to go cash in while you have the opportunity, even though your veteran guys aren't necessarily playing well. I mean, if your veteran guys aren't playing well in the future, you're going to punt in the future years too? It's only going to get worse for some of those guys. You have to pull the trigger now. St. Louis Cardinals are kind of in the same boat. They got aging veterans. They have a front office personnel that has been in there for a long time. They made the playoffs recently, but they're still in win-now mode based on the way the roster is constructed. They will be buyers. The Arizona Diamondbacks, now, this is a team that doesn't necessarily have to be all in because they are young and they're at the beginning of their window, and their window opened a little bit earlier than usual just because of the run that they went on last year. But they invested $160 million in free agency. So they've made the decision that they need to be buyers too at the deadline. And they got some guys coming off of injuries, and they're expected to be part of the wild card conversation in the next couple of months. They're going to be buyers. Now, why are the Cincinnati Reds buyers at the deadline? Because, again, they're a very young team too. They're a team that's not invested a lot of money in veteran free agents. They have built from within. They have loaded up their farm system, and they're seeing a lot of those young players now compete at the major league level. They're in a buy now mode because they're close, and they need to show their fans that they can make the postseason because it's been a long time since they have. The other 3 teams have made the postseason very recently. The Padres, obviously, being in the NLCS in 2022. The Cardinals have made the wild card a couple of years ago. And then, of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks were in the World Series last year. That's why those 4 teams are all buyers. The Cincinnati Reds are a buyer because they got to prove to their fan base that they are a playoff team. So they're going to go after it, being only 2.5 games out of first place. And again, playing a lot better baseball than they did at the beginning part of the season. On the fence. Your on the fence teams are the Pirates, the Cubs, and the Giants. The Pirates, the Cubs, and the Giants have a decision they need to make. Again, they're not necessarily in a mood right now where they have to go all in. Cubs have made some smaller moves, which might indicate that they're looking to add by July 30th, but it remains to be seen how aggressive they will be if their play doesn't improve, especially given their minus 14 run differential. They got a highly rated farm system. It's getting closer to producing. The Cubs front office has a decision to make. Trade from that group this summer to win now or try to develop a long-term star, which they need. The team's performance in July will likely provide an answer. I would agree with that. I think they're still like a year or two away from being a highly competitive club. They have a couple of guys on rental deals. They're not necessarily the face of the franchise. They do have Dansby Swanson locked in for a long period of time. But they're still not quite at the window yet to compete, with a couple of aging veterans on that team as well. And now might not be the time to cash in. Again, every situation is different. It's not just based on your wins and losses. And that's why still to this day, I'm still a component of the Padres being buyers last year. And hindsight's always 20/20. It's easy to say like, oh, well, it didn't work out. We should have traded all of these pieces, to get what exactly? More prospects to try to trade later on? I mean, there's no guarantee that would have worked out either. Pittsburgh Pirates, they're still a couple of years away. We don't know how much of inning limits are going to be on their young starting players because they got a lot of young starting pitchers, I should say, that are learning how to pitch in the major leagues. They got a great young core in Pittsburgh, but they're not ready, I don't think, to really go all in yet. But they're still hanging around, and they got a good pitching staff where they probably could. But I think it's a year early for the Pirates. And then the Giants, nobody knows what the Giants are doing ever. I mean, the Giants the last couple of years have all this money, right? They have all this money that they should be spending on free agents or trades or what have you, and they just have not done it. And then everybody keeps continuing to wait for Farhan Zaidi to go out there and start spending money. But according to this article on ESPN.com, when asked a bunch of executives in Major League Baseball, what do you think the Giants are going to do? The conclusion, and most of the answers from executives was, who knows? Might be the best way to sum up what the experts are saying about the Giants' most likely deadline plans. According to the article, under Farhan Zaidi, San Francisco has kept things close to the vest. Giants have landed in the muddled middle because they are void of stars in a competitive National League West that includes fellow wildcard competitors in the Diamondbacks and Padres, all of them well behind division-leading Dodgers. Maybe San Francisco does what Seattle likes to do, one scout said, a little buying and a little selling, but I'm not sure of their direction just yet. I think the Giants will continue to be an on-the-fence team up until the final moments of the trade deadline. That leaves us with two teams likely to subtract, the New York Mets and the Washington Nationals. They are two of the hottest teams in the National League right now. They're on a little bit of a tears, but just wait a week, as one scout said in this article. Both could be back in 8th or 9th place. Mets might be an easier call. Obviously, David Stearns is in his first year in New York. They talked about it last year at the deadline that they weren't going to compete till 2026, 2027, or at least their departing pitchers did. I don't see the Mets buying at the deadline. I think they're on a little bit of a hot stretch. Grimace helped them out. San Diego Padres helped them out in New York to kind of give them this false sense of hope. But, they got to make a decision on Pete Alonso. I think they're going to trade him at the deadline. They have valuable pieces that could be sent away as they try to break down this roster and get rid of some of this money. Because, again, this Mets organization is the highest paid team in Major League Baseball, and they're below 500. Washington Nationals, I don't know necessarily what they have to sell. I mean, Kyle Finnegan has been fantastic. He could be a bullpen piece. I think they're going to try to trade off anything that's not tied down to the boat and continue to prepare for the future. But that's how I see this playing out. So if you're looking at that, I mean, that's 4 teams in the National League looking for some buying help at the trade deadline, mixed with probably some of the star teams. I mean, the Dodgers have some holes still. The Milwaukee Brewers obviously have some holes. It's definitely still going to be a seller's market. But it's not going to be as much of a seller's market as people think, because not all of these teams that are, even though they're in the race, are going to be making a trade at the deadline to buy just because of what the record is. You have to do a deeper dive into what every team's situation is, and every team's situation is different. I mean, the Padres, even though they're around 500 and have been 500 for so long, the Padres are not in a let's see what this team can do before I pull the trigger. That's not this team. That is the Mets and the Nationals and the Giants and the Cubs and the Pirates. That's the let's see what they can do and see if they have earned their way to make a deal. You can't, it's not cookie cutter with records. The Padres are not in that situation because they have already made their decision. What should the Padres do? Why is it time to go after it now? I'm going to give you the reason as we wrap up the show. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. Thanks for making our day a part of yours. Thanks for smashing the like button on YouTube. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms at B_SURP. Padres going for a 4-game sweep today against the Milwaukee Brewers. Always got to check the official time. You never know when games are on national TV and all that other stuff. 1:10 first pitch, 12:10 with Sam Levitt on the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show. Get you ready for Padres baseball. It's going to be a hot one today. You're going down to Petco Park and you're sitting on the first base side of the stands. You better have your sunscreen and the hats and everything because it's going to be cooking out there. Right field, first base line, it's going to get hot. So be prepared for the heat at Petco Park for the game. Final game of the 4-game series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Final game of the season series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Michael King getting the start today for the Pods against the Brew Crew. The last time Michael King pitched against the Brew Crew, he almost had a no-hitter. Carried that thing a long way. And then eventually the Padres ended up losing that game. The only loss they have had to the Brewers all year was in a game in which Michael King had a no-no through, I think it was like 7 innings, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Padres blew it late. Other than that, the Padres could be playing for a clean 6 or 7-game sweep against the Milwaukee Brewers. Currently 5-1, looking to go 6-1. It's Michael King versus Tobias Myers. King 5-4 with a 3.49 ERA, 101 strikeouts in the season. Myers 4-2 with a 3.26 ERA and 42 strikeouts. San Diego Padres, as I mentioned, are a buyer at the deadline. I think for multiple reasons. We've talked about the window. We've talked about, the future is no guarantee. And the thing is with the Padres and where they're at right now, and especially how you run a major league franchise, as much as everybody is worried about the future and what the team's going to look like in the next 5, 6, 7 years, and that's why you got to hang on to some of these prospects. And I'm not a huge believer in it either way. I mean, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works out when you keep the prospects going through, and sometimes they end up not being what you think they're going to be. If anything, over the last 5, 6, 7 years in which the San Diego Padres have made trades, A.J. Preller has kept the best prospects as part of the organization. Now, we'll see what happens with C.J. Abrams and James Wood moving forward. But out of all, and I went through this last Sunday with all of the top prospects in the Padres organization since 2015. The top 30 prospects in the Padres org since 2015. There hasn't been a lot that have been able to be an above-average player in Major League Baseball. And out of those, I think there's 9 out of the position players. There were 73 top 30 prospects since A.J. Preller took over. 73 different top 30 prospects in the Padres organization since A.J. Preller took over. Some of those are still current prospects, so it kind of skews the numbers a little bit. But out of those 73 players, 9 of them are players that have an OPS plus or an ERA plus north of 100, which means they're above average players. Actually, 9 of the position players. Of those 9 position players, 4 of them are still part of the Padres organization. Those players are Fernando Tatis Jr., those players are Jackson Merrill, those players are Jay Cronenworth, and surprisingly enough, even though it's not a large sample size, Eggy Rosario. So you let 5 of those players go away. That was like Josh Naylor. I think you're hit and miss on whether or not Josh Naylor would be a contributing asset to this team, or or at least the player that you're just so upset that he's not on your team right now. He probably could help. The other one's Hunter Renfroe. Anybody really want Hunter Renfroe back on this team? Anybody upset that Hunter Renfroe is not a Padre right now? Alex Dickerson had a plus 100 OPS plus, which means he was above average player. He's not playing in he's not playing in pro ball anymore. He's in independent ball now, if he is still playing. And then Trey Turner, which obviously Trey Turner hurts, but you have Fernando Tatis Jr. now. The last one is Franmil Reyes out of the 5. Franmil Reyes is playing in Korea. So take all of that for what it's worth. Those guys were all prospects. Those are the 9 prospects since AJ Preller took over that have had an above average major league performance in their careers after joining the big leagues. Again, according to OPS plus. That's not necessarily a big track record where you're like worried about some of these guys parting ways. I saw one guy in the chat go like, "Go keep the top 4 to 5 prospects." No, you got to keep the top 2, because in reality, those are probably the guys that are going to be the biggest impact. It's probably going to be about 2. Sometimes you get lucky with some of the other prospects, but there's no guarantee in the future that they're all going to be studs. I'm keeping Salas and DeVries if I can. Everybody else I think is on the table. That's why you go after trades that counteract some of those prospects. Again, the timing on all of this is overall different. To me, if you're going to make a trade, like I'm not trading any of my top 4 to 5 prospects, not named DeVries or Salas, for a rental. That would be foolish. But I am, and I will, trade some of those players for a player with control and a player that will be part of the Padres organization for the next 2 to 3 years. And there are some of those players out there. That, to me, makes sense. You know, trading an Adam Major, right, because he's one of those top arms at the top end of our top 30 prospect list, for a guy like Garrett Crochet mixed with some other prospects in there that might never pan out. You never know. Because I don't care what the White Sox say, nobody's giving him a Salas or DeVries for Garrett Crochet. But if you trade some of your pitching that's going to be up in the next 2 to 3 years for a guy that you have control over the next 2 to 3 years, you're exchanging, especially one that's cheap, which Garrett Crochet is money-wise, you're exchanging the first 2 to 3 years where a guy has to figure it out in the major leagues for a player that's already been there and done that and is an everyday major leaguer, a proven major league asset. That's where buying makes sense. And then in 3 to 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, you know, people can complain that they got rid of these guys, but there's no guarantee that they're going to pan out ever. You know, they have the saying, and I said this in the first segment of the show, you know, you got to live life to the fullest because there's no guarantee about tomorrow. The same thing could be said about how you run some of these trades. You got it. The fortune favors the bold. But there's a difference between living your life where you're taking some chances and going out and experiencing life and not passing up, you know, some great opportunities in the present because you're worried about long-term future. There's that side of it, but there's a difference between me trying to live to the fullest and taking a couple of risks at a young age compared to emptying out my bank account on a weekend bender in Vegas because YOLO, you only live once. I'm not saying the Padres should empty out their entire cupboard for like 2 to 3 players. Live life to the fullest because there's no guarantee for tomorrow. Let's empty out the bank account in Vegas for 2 to 3 days. No, that would be reckless. But I am saying, you know, you saved up some money. Here's a little bit left. Yeah, let's go out and have a good weekend trip somewhere for 2 to 3 days. Enjoy life while you have the opportunity. Try some foods that you've never tried before. The same thing with the Padres at the deadline. You could have a great time and live in the moment and live in the present and still plan for the future at the exact same time. And be bold, but also not reckless. There's a difference. So I'm not advocating that you trade Ethan Salas for a Garrett Crochet or you trade a DeVries for a couple of arms in the A's organization, the back end of the bullpen in Ursig and Miller. I'm not saying do that, but I am saying be willing to give up a Snelling or a Lesko to try to improve your club now for the next couple of years with a proven Major League Baseball player. Fortune favors the bold. That's how I view this deadline for the San Diego Padres. They're in win now mode. They've made that decision years before, and they got to stick to the plan, a plan that they haven't stuck with at all since A.J. Preller showed up. They've had a different plan almost every 2 to 3 years. And right now it's starting to trend towards, well, we got to get young. We got to be able to, you can't be hugging these prospects. You got to be able to go for it while you have these stars still in their prime. Because as much as we love the way Jackson Merrill is playing right now, and Jerickson Profar and Matt Waldron's doing a great job, and Robert Suarez, there's no guarantee that they can match that next year, even if they're on the team or not. There's no guarantee that these guys are going to continue to be able to play at that spot. You never know what you got. And if you are in any position to win right now, you got to be all in every time you can. Because you never know who can make a run in the postseason. I mean, we saw the Washington Nationals do it in 2019, and they went on a roll, and they ended up winning a World Series as the last team in the wild card. And the last team in the wild card has done a lot of damage in the National League the last couple of years. Time to buy, regardless of what the record is. It's been a fun show. Thanks again for being a part of it. We look forward to talking to you again next Sunday from 8 to 10. I'll be on with Andy and Elston all this week. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.